Imagine you have 364 calories a day. The stove is cold. Your breath fogs in your own living room. The streets are white, but your stomach is empty. What would you do, as a civilian in Western Europe, to survive the hunger winter? The secret route to food, the deadliest mistake people made. Why tulip bulbs suddenly became life-saving. In this video, we're going to break down the practical choices that actually increased your odds of survival in the brutal winter of 1944 to 1945. We'll cover how to find calories, how to preserve heat, and how to move safely. We'll look at the routes that worked and the myths that were downright dangerous. All of this is based on museum archives, demographic studies, and the powerful testimonies of those who lived through it. So, how did things get this bad? After the failure of Operation Market Garden, all transport links collapsed. A German blockade combined with a Dutch railway strike completely strangled food distribution. There was food in the rural areas, plenty of it, but it just wasn't reaching the cities. The occupation, the freezing cold, and a logistical nightmare all combined into one brutal winter. The result? Millions were put on starvation rations, and tens of thousands died from hunger and cold, especially the elderly. March of 1945 became the deadliest month of the entire period. Official calorie counts plummeted, sometimes to as low as 364 calories per day by the war's end. Survival was a daily battle. Survival boiled down to a simple equation: calories in versus calories spent. Official rations often fell to between 400 and 800 calories a day, which is not nearly enough to live on. You had to supplement this. Soup kitchens and church aid offered a modest but reliable source of food. Bartering was essential. People traded linens, jewelry, or family silverware for a loaf of bread or a few potatoes. The staples became sugar beets, carrots, and turnips. They were heavy to carry but dense in calories. And yes, tulip bulbs. They don't taste good, but they are edible if you prepare them correctly. You have to remove the poisonous sprout and the brown skin first, then cook them thoroughly. But here's a crucial myth buster. Binge eating after a period of starvation could be fatal. It's a condition called refeeding syndrome. If you suddenly got your hands on a lot of food, you had to reintroduce it slowly in small amounts to give your body time to adjust. A moment of relief could turn deadly if not handled with care. For many, the real difference between life and death was something called the hunger trek. People would set out on foot or on a bicycle with wooden tires, or even pulling a sled, heading toward the rural provinces of Utrecht, North Holland, Gelderland, or Overijssel. You might leave home with a clock or some fine bed linens, and if you were lucky, you'd return with a sack of potatoes, some rye, or maybe even a strip of bacon. So what increased your odds on these desperate journeys? You had to leave before dawn to avoid patrols. Traveling in small, trusted groups was safer than going alone or in a large, conspicuous crowd. It was vital to avoid major bridges and known checkpoints. You had to plan safe places to rest, like barns or church halls that offered shelter. The most well-known routes were often the riskiest, so being able to improvise and find a different path was a key survival skill. Just finding food wasn't enough. You had to stop your body from burning precious calories just to stay warm. The cold was a silent killer. Surviving meant capturing and keeping every bit of heat. A common strategy was creating a room within a room. Families would shrink their entire lives into one small space, sealing off the rest of the house and covering drafts with blankets or newspapers. At night, you'd sleep in layers of clothing. If you could get hot water, a hot water bottle was a lifesaver. Fuel was incredibly scarce. Official briquettes were rare, so people turned to burning anything they could find. Sticks, broken furniture, even floorboards from their own homes. Sometimes you had to cook outdoors, because the smoke from an indoor fire could attract unwanted attention. Every movement had to be short and purposeful. Sweating meant losing heat, which you simply couldn't afford. In these conditions, getting sick was a death sentence. Illness meant leaking calories you didn't have. So how did people maintain their health? First, you boiled all your water if you had the fuel. If not, you'd melt snow and let the sediment settle at the bottom before drinking. Adding any simple fats you could find, like drippings or lard, to beet or turnip stews provided a much-needed energy boost. Rhythm and rest were also crucial. Spreading tiny portions of food throughout the day helped to keep energy levels stable and avoid fainting spells. But perhaps most importantly, community saved lives. Neighbors and local parishes made it a priority to look after the frail and the elderly. People shared what little they had, and that social net was the reason many survived. Then, finally, hope fell from the sky. In the last days of the war, the Allies launched Operation Manna and Operation Chowhound. From late April to early May 1945, British and American bombers flew at incredibly low altitudes, not with bombs, but with tons of food. They dropped their life-saving cargo over designated zones near The Hague, Rotterdam, and Gouda. This was followed by Operation Faust, where Canadian convoys brought in relief by truck. But even with this aid, there were dangers. To stay safe, you had to use the official distribution channels run by local committees. And again, if you were severely malnourished, you couldn't just rush to eat the fat-rich food parcels. You had to pace your intake very carefully to avoid the deadly shock of refeeding syndrome. So, we've covered what to do, but it's just as important to know what not to do. Traveling alone after curfew or trying to cross thin ice was incredibly risky. You could run into patrols, get robbed, or fall through into the freezing water. Eating raw, unwashed roots or bulbs was a direct path to diarrhea and infection, which would drain your energy fast. Gorging yourself after a lucky find could, as we've said, kill you. And finally, you shouldn't trade away everything you owned at once. You had to spread out your bartering because you still needed a life to return to after the winter ended. Between 1944 and 1945, tens of thousands of people died from hunger and cold in the Western Netherlands. The vast majority were older adults, but behind every one of those statistics is a human story. A family counting out their last potatoes, a neighbor sharing a final ladle of soup, a community holding on together. It's a story of resilience in the face of absolute despair. Surviving the hunger winter came down to stacking small, smart choices. Finding calories resourcefully, trapping every bit of heat, bartering safely, and accepting aid without shocking your body back to life too quickly. If you think more people should know about this chapter of history, please share this video. And in the comments below, if you have a family story from that winter of 44-45, please tell it. Let's make sure we never forget. Thank you for watching.